Good morning, class.
Morning, sir.
Okay. You are getting me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, please inform others.
Hey, morning guys, can you mute your cameras?
What is happening?
Good morning, class.
Please. Don't be a joker. Don't be a joker here. Hey, please make sure you have mute your microphone. Make sure you have mute your microphone. Brighton, make sure you have mute your microphone. Daniel Mtanda, Faith Kimeli, Nisha, make sure you have mute your microphone.
Wait, mnanipigaje?
Na 10,000. Elfu kumi na tisa. Niambie.
Tutumie mbili. Oh, I can see myself. Good morning. Wanimute kidogo tusikie kwa kelele yao.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning.
Happy New Year.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
In your life and prayers, sir.
Kimo mmekuwa mmengoja tu hii ya.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, sir. Good morning. Morning.
Morning, sir.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
Zengine hadi bado tunalala.
Welcome to the first lecture. Last week we met and we did see the course outline. The course outline is what is being projected, and we did see we are going to go through the content that is projected. So we are going to look at this course content for this course. We gave the objectives and the mode of delivery. So if we look at the course content, the following topical areas, concepts have been identified. That first we are going to look at and measures of precision, then measures of dispersion, and finally we shall look at the graphical representation of quantitative data. That in the second part of the course, in the second part of the course, we shall look at the matrix algebra, we shall look at the definitions, then operations on matrices, the inversion by determinants, and then solutions to linear equations using matrices. And for this, we shall look at 2.2 and then 3 by 3. The third part of the course, we shall look at public finance, and this we shall look at the functions of the government, how the government raises revenue, and what guides the government in terms of its public expenditures. We shall look at the balance of payments, the gross domestic product, and the gross national product. These are concepts that are used to describe the cost of living. This is what's common for us. And this is what we shall describe in terms of the inflation. Then we shall look at demographic issues and budgeting as part and parcel of the public finance. A concept on taxation shall be discussed. Basically, we shall look at the principles, then concept of tax evasion and how to calculate the income tax. And finally, the fifth area we shall look at where we shall look at definitions and examples. Why do we study index numbers? Why do we need them? And how do we compute the price indices as a way of determining the inflation and the cost of living? And finally, we shall discuss matters of investment and more specifically in terms of the stock market. That is what we can, the topics that we can describe from the course content that was discussed and presented last time. But if you forgot, then this is what we are looking at, that the course content is what gives us what are we to discuss. We would look at the basic statistics, distribution of data, numerical methods of data representation, measures of central tendency, measures of dispersion, definitions of matrices, that's matrix algebra, operations, determinants, and then solutions of 2 by 2 and then 3 by 3. Then under public finance, we shall look at the budgeting, we shall look at personal budget, business budgets, financial projections, then the revenues, the expenditures, balance of payment, balance of trade, gross national product, and that continues as we did see in our last lecture. So today we wish to start off with the first concept, the first part, and this is none other than what we call statistics. We start off with this statistics. We wish to first of all define, and as we define, we want to look at what exactly does statistics entail and what we need to look at. Basically, the mode of presentation we are going to present, then we'll be looking at the live videos as I go through the computations. So with me, we'll be changing from this mode of presentation and then doing some calculations or examples from our board. So basically statistics, what is statistics? Statistics is a science, but not just a science, but that science that deals with methods. It's a collection of methods that deal with how do we collect data, how do we organize data, how do we analyze data, how do we present data, and how do we interpret that data. Why do we do this? Why do we collect, organize, analyze, present, and interpret? We do this for purposes of decision making. Many times in our day-to-day activities, we deal with, we make decisions. These decisions may relate to different aspects. You are a student, you may want to see to it that for you to go through your degree, you wish to get a certain classification. How do we go about it? We look at it in terms of how are you performing, organize your performance, analyze your performance, then we can present it and interpret, and perhaps that gives you a better way and a better option to interpret those performance results. Many times we may want to look at certain phenomena. We want to see the growth in terms of numbers of students, perhaps in this institution. We may do this by looking at the trends. What has been the trend in terms of admissions? We can organize this in terms of tables. We can analyze and see the changes. We can present it in terms of graphs, in terms of pictograms, and the like. Then we interpret this data. From the interpretation, that's when we take decisions. And therefore, decision making is key. And this is an aspect of statistics. That for us to understand data is nothing other than information. that data comes in several categories. There are basically two categories of data. One, primary data, and two, secondary data. The primary data is that original information that we collect from first hand. Say, for example, you are asked, how many children are you in your family? You will say, we are a 2, we are a 4, we are how many? How many are you in your respective program? Then you give the number. We are a 60, we are 100, we are 200, or the like. How many are taking this course, KUC125? We are 2,000. So that is data. That is information that we are getting it firsthand. And we get this through certain methods that we may use to collect the data. Then on the other hand, secondary data, this is what we may refer to as second-hand information, that which is already obtained by a person, and now we can also access and use that information. Such information is what we get from, say, books, what we get from, say, journals, what we get out of internet, that we are not the ones who are having this original information, but we are getting it from somebody who did carry out and collect that information. So secondary data is the second-hand information. We are the second parties to the use of that information. Primary data, we are the first hand. We are the first people to use that. Then data can be in two types, qualitative or quantitative. What do we mean by qualitative data? This is information that is not necessarily, is not numerical. That which we cannot quantify is qualitative. By quantification, it means we cannot assign value, we cannot assign a number. Look at things to do with gender. When you talk about gender, we are looking at either being male or female. Look about skin complexion. You are either dark, you are either light skin, black, or the like. These are things that are qualitative in nature. And something qualitative is something that we may not assign a numerical value. Quantitative data, on the other hand, is information that is therefore numerical and has value. When we talk of having value, it means we can assign a number. For example, how many children are you in your family? How many are you in your class? How many people voted for a certain group or a certain party? And therefore, anything that we can assign number, anything that can attain value, then that is referred to as quantitative data. So many times, as we come across information, this information is either qualitative or quantitative. Qualitative, such that we may not assign a numerical value. Quantitative, because it attains or assumes a certain value that is numerical in nature. When you say 3, that's a number, that's a value. 10, 20, that is quantitative. But qualitatively, we may not assign, say, gender. You cannot assign value to gender as somebody being male or female. Complexion, maybe your tastes, your preferences, you may not assign value, and therefore such is qualitative in nature. Now, that which we can assign value normally takes two forms. It's either it assumes an exact value, an exact number, like how many cars. Then you say there are 10. How many people? 200. How many buildings? 5. Those are assuming exact value. And if information or data assumes such an exact value, like in the number of children, the number of family members, then we say that type of data is quantitative and it is discrete. Discrete, we can count. However, there is certain data that is quantitative in nature, but assumes values within a certain range. Look at, say, the weight. That I am 120.1 kilos. You know, that's my weight. Perhaps the reason I'm called Muzito. 120.5 kilograms. Look at height. I am 5.7 feet. You see, we are assuming values within a range. 5.7 is between 5 and 6. 120.75 is between 120 and 121. That once we assume values within that range, then that is referred to as being continuous. So discrete data assumes exact values. Continuous data assumes values within a given range. So we are going to revolve around quantifying data, dealing with data that is qualitative and data that is quantitative. If it is quantitative, it will be either discrete or it will be continuous. So as we look at this, there's need for us therefore to understand what type of information, what type of data are we generating, and how do we go about it so that we collect, we organize, we analyze, we interpret, and we can present for purposes of making decisions. If qualitatively we wanted to find out how many students in this class are female, how many are male, the characteristic of interest being gender, this is qualitative. But when we now get to the number, we are assigning a numerical value, then that becomes quantitative. And if we give the exact number, they are 50 females, 10 males, then that takes or assumes a discrete quantitative data. But if we now say that the average age, the age of students in this class is, say, 19.5 years, then that assumes a continuous. It's like it's on a continuum, and therefore that becomes continuous quantitative data. Now, as we say that statistics deals with methods of collecting, organizing, analyzing, presenting, and interpreting data for purposes of decision making, there is need for us to look at how do we collect data? What methods do we have to collect data? There are basically about 3 or 4 methods of data collection. The first is where we use the questionnaires. Questionnaires, these are things to do with pen and paper. From the word question, we generate questionnaire, a set of questions that are asked pertaining to a defined characteristic of interest. I may want to know what is the age of certain person. So we may want to do this, and we may want to ask so that we see to it that we are getting the exact answer. I know, and I'm told that ladies don't give their ages. So we may want to find out through the questionnaire. So we may ask somebody, when did you sit your KCSE? So somebody will say, I sat for my KCSE in the year, say, 2022? When did you sit for your KCPE? Somebody will say, I did my KCPE in the year 13. Then, did you repeat any class? So the answer would be yes or no. So if your answer is yes, at what point did you repeat? Is it secondary? Is it primary? So you'll say, I repeated. How many times? Say once. So you know that this person did repeat. So if you work out that for one to be in secondary school, it takes 4 years. For one to be in primary school, it takes 8 years. Then this person did repeat once, so you add 1 year. So that gives you already 13 years of school so far. But at what age, average age is somebody in standard 1? So averagely we start class 1. Now you call it grade 1, perhaps at the age of 6 years. So that means that this person is about 19 years now. So if the person is 19 years presently, and we are in the year 2023, so we can infer back and see when this person was born. So those are a set of questions that one can complete, one can fail, and basically it's by pen and paper. Such instrument, such a method is fixed because you may not ask supplementary questions. So this gives rise to the second method, the interviews. That interview is basically an interaction between 2 or more people. 2, because we have the interviewer and the interviewee, that you will be asking questions. And the respondent, the interviewee, will be responding in light of how she understands that question. You are able, as the interviewer, to ask for clarifications, to ask for details, to ask for further information regarding the given response. Such additional questions are what we may refer to as probing questions. So with an interview, you interact between 2 or more. There are normally various types of interviews. We have seen this. You may have one respondent against a panel, one respondent against one interviewee. You can have one interviewer against a group. If it's against a group, then we call those ones focused group interviews. Then the third method of how we get information, and which is key, is by way of observation. Observation means we are using the senses, what we can see, what we can feel by touch, what we can smell, what we can hear. That if you recall in your chemistry classes, the test for hydrogen gas, that when you test it with a burning spleen, it produces a pop sound. Pop. What does that mean? You are using your senses. If you smell something, whether a nice smell of some food that is being cooked, you pass through the staff mess, then they are preparing a kuku, for that matter. I hope you are not salivating for that. You will get the smell. Pass through the ablution block. You will feel the odor. You are only using your senses. That observation basically involves the use of senses. What you can see, what you can hear, what you can feel, what you can smell. That you want to know your lecturer, Dan Kanwasike Wekesa, his true behavior, his true characteristics. That you may want to see When I'm teaching in the morning, how am I? When I'm teaching mid-morning and especially lunchtime, how am I? When it is in the evening, how am I? When I've visited a social place and I've taken one for the road, for some of us who sit with the people, who sit with the men like Jack Daniels, Jameson, Viceroy, John Walker, name them. How do I behave before? You can observe. And after interaction with those men, how do I behave? You can observe. So you can say that Wasike is a drunkard, or Wasike is normally tickled when he has taken one for the road. This is by use of senses. Some of us become more and more talkative when we have tested that liquid, and others become more reserved. So these are part of the method that we may want to see. That some of us say, yes, we are saved and Christ has saved us. How do we want to know the behavior? How do we categorize such a person? We can observe how this person carries himself or herself around. That does this person do what is Christ-like? How does he react to certain things? This is what we can see, that we only observe that characteristic of interest. We want to see what is in the mind of this person. That our dressing, though my dress, my choice for some of us, but it portrays a lot. If every day I am in my free size, I'm not against any denomination or any person. Some of us have in those overlapping that covers up to the feet. Very good, very decent. And others who walk half naked. These are certain things. If I want to understand, I just observe how you dress, how you talk, how you walk, how you behave. Then I can categorize you as per those observations. So observation is a key method in terms of collecting information, which we may organize, which we may analyze, which we may present and interpret for purposes of decision making. The current trend and seemingly going digital is inevitable. Today, something happens. You will see everybody with a phone taking a photo or taking a video of a given occurrence. An accident occurs, then people are very busy taking videos for this from the scene. Why is that the case? It seems we are collecting information. This information can be organized, can be analyzed. And you even saw, and today the courts can admit such photos, can admit such videos. So this is part and parcel. And seeming if technology is taking precedence, then this method is going to be prominent in the near future. So we have a number of methods, and we can collect information, collect data by way of questionnaires, by way of interviews, by way of observation, and now by way of technology through photographs and videos. This is how we collect information. So once we have collected the information pertaining a certain characteristic of interest, we want to see that interest of concern is what we are referring to as the characteristic. If it exists, and to what level. Then we can use either of these methods. That the method we use to collect information gives us an indication of how accurate the information we collect. Many times, we may have to use methods that may not give us the very best. So you need to understand what characteristic of interest are you looking for and what method best fits. You are looking at a soccer match. Man U is playing Man City. And you are gambling as to whether Rashford was offside, whether Rashford interfered with the goalkeeper and the defense or not in that goal that Bruno scored. You see, you need to replay and replay and replay. And that's why technology is coming in, and we are using this technology, which is commonly referred to as the use of VAR. This is a way, and we can replay it a given number of times. So this is truly what we are talking about. Now, once we have collected data, where do we collect this data is the next question. We collect data from what we refer to as a population. A population is the totality, the holistic group that has or possesses what our characteristic of interest is all about. We want to find out information about university students. So the entire of the university student population, the group that forms our population. That out of this, we may want to focus onto certain population. We want to focus onto those who take sciences. So that becomes our target. That from this total, we are only targeting those who take sciences. But from those that we are targeting, we can access a given group. Which group of science? Perhaps those in public universities, maybe those in private universities. That becomes our accessible population. Now, from this accessible population, we can now get a sample. A sample is a smaller representation of the entire population. A smaller representation of the population. So if we sample and say now we want to look at those who take mathematics, for example, or those who take computer science and IT. So those are the ones who will be representing the science students. Now from the computer science students, for example, we can now sample out the subjects, the actual respondents, who we can collect information from. Those are now referred to as the real subjects, or otherwise the units. So from the entire of the university students, we are targeting those who are science-based. Then our focus is on those taking computer science. Then in public universities. Then now we select from those taking computer in public universities as the respondents. Those forms the subject or otherwise the units. And those are the units or those subjects are the ones that will actually provide information which we can now organize, which we can now analyze, which we can now present, and which we can use in terms of taking decisions and generalizing to imply or to infer to the entire population. Now, as we collect this data, there's need for us to understand that if we are collecting primary data, we looked at primary data, that which is first-hand. We want to see to it, to a given characteristic, to a given phenomenon. And we are now getting the information from the units. And we record it the way it occurs from this unit. Then we refer to that as raw data. So raw data is data that has been collected and recorded as it occurs. You are asked, what is your age in this class? One would say 18, 24, 22, 20, 17, name it. So if we record it the way it has occurred that way, then that's what we are going to refer to as raw data. How many family members do you have in your household? We are 5, others are 7, others are 2, others are single children, are alone. So if you record it the way it is, then we refer to that as raw data. So once we have this raw data, how do we now proceed to organize the data? Remember where I began from. We talked of statistics. And we say statistics is a science that deals with methods of 1, collecting, 2, organizing, 3, analyzing, 4, presenting, and 5, interpreting. Interpretation can go on at each and every stage of data collection. During collection, you can interpret. During organization, you interpret. During analysis, you interpret. During presentation, you interpret. And all this interpretation, therefore, is for the purpose of decision making. So as we have seen how do we collect and where do we collect this information from, and that information that is recorded as it occurs from its first hand, from the units, is what we are referring to raw data. Then there is need for us to understand how do we now organize this data. We say it is a science. Something scientific is something that's chronological, something that follows a standard way, something that follows a given step. That raw data can be organized in the first step by generating what we refer to as an array. An array is an arrangement of data in either ascending or descending order of magnitude. That is the simplest way of organizing the data. That we can organize this data by forming an array, such that we arrange it in either ascending or descending order of magnitude. How does this work? Look at the following cases. That we are looking at the number of family members we are looking at the number of family members in a household. How many members are there in a given set of households? Say we record the following. We have collected the following. We have 2, we have 4, we have 1, we have 6, we have 2, then we have 3. These are the number of family members in a given household. We have recorded the way it occurs. This is what we are referring to as the raw data. That's the raw data. Now we are saying that the simplest way is to organize this in what we refer to as an array. An array is such that we organize it in either ascending or descending order of magnitude. That in ascending, we are starting with the least, or what we may refer to as the smallest, to the highest or the biggest. In descending, we start with the largest, or the biggest for that number, to the smallest. So whichever way we adopt, either ascending or descending, will give us an organization of our raw data. That if we use ascending, how do we organize this case of family members? That in ascending order, we are starting with the list. And then the list is 1. Then we have 2. We have another 2. We have 3. We have 4. Then we have 6. This is what we have. That if we arrange it, an array is an arrangement, then we have it as 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, and 6. In the reverse form, the descending order, we are starting with the largest to the smallest. So what is the largest here? The largest of our raw data is 6. So we start with 6. The second is 4. Then we have 3. Then we have 2. Then 2. Then 1. So in ascending order, we have 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 6. In descending order, we have 6, 4, 3, 2, 2, 1. That this is the simplest way that we can use to organize data. That once we have done this, then we can now tabulate. How do we tabulate data? For us to tabulate data, there is need for us to understand what reasons exist. Why must we tabulate? And why must we tabulate the data? There are various reasons that we can use, that we have, that guide us in terms of how to tabulate data. That from an array, we can generate a table. This table has to reflect the characteristic of interest. This is about the families. We have one family with 2, another family with 4, another family with 1, another family with 6, another family with 2, another family with 3. Then from this, we have generated an array in either ascending or descending order. Now, how can we tabulate? We are looking at this in terms of families. So we can generate a table to have We have the family. Then how many are they? Then we have the number. We have a family of 1. If we use the ascending. A family of 1, there are how many? It's only 1 family. We have a family with 2. How many families have 2 members? There are 2. We have a family with 3. How many families have 3? 1. We have a family with 4. How many families have 4? 1. And we have a family with 6. How many families have 6? 1. And this, if you look at it, it gives us a sum of 1 plus 2, that's 3, 4, 5, 6. So this gives us a total of 6. So we see that 6 family members, 6 households, with a given number of families, which basically we have organized it in an array, the simplest way. And from this, we are able now to generate a table. We are able now to tabulate. And from this table, we can now make inferences. Such inferences are what we need to look at. That from the raw data that we have, we are able to organize it and now generate a table. Such a table is what we refer to as a frequency distribution table. Now, before we delve more into this, let's look at why must we tabulate data. So as we look at this, we go back to our screen. Let's see how we go about it. There we are. that from what we have looked at, then you realize that from what we have organized using that simple arrangement in either ascending or descending order of magnitude, we can understand as to why, therefore, we should organize or tabulate the data. Looking at it, it's easy for purposes of comparisons. We can easily compare, we can contrast, and therefore, different groupings are giving us or is being made easy. That we are able to locate the required data with a lot of ease. This is because we have now organized it and tabulated it. That unnecessary details can be avoided. Many times, there are unnecessary details. That these unnecessary details can be avoided because we want now to focus onto specifics that are we are sorry we have had internet fluctuations. But we are back. So we were saying that the simplest way to organize data is by way of generating an array, which is an arrangement of data, the raw data specifically, in either ascending or descending order of magnitude. And once we make the array, then we can tabulate. And reasons for tabulating include for comparison purposes, for easy location of the required data, unnecessary details can be avoided, and then tabulation summarizes the data and therefore takes less space. So we want to see other forms of tabulating data. Look at the example that is now being projected. That there are several ways. That was one. Now we have another example which we may look at. Look at this example. Suppose you went to the field and you have collected the following. That in the year 2021, a certain firm employed 90 staff, of whom 79 were men. That during that year 2021, 17 staff left, and 13 of these who left were men. The recruitment during the year was 13, and out of these, 3 were women. That's for the year 2021. In the year 2022, wastage declined by 3 among men as compared to the year 2021, and no woman left in the year 2022, as 6 more men but 1 fewer women were recruited. That the total number of employees as at 1st January 2022 was 93. So we need to tabulate this data. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for us, this is data collected from the field using either the questionnaire, using the observation. Maybe you have captured that using the interview, and you have gotten this information that it looks so clumsy and crowded. How can we go about it so that we can create to organize this data for purposes of easy comparison, for purposes of locating the required data easily, to avoid unnecessary details, and to summarize and take less space. Now, for us to do that, we must understand what is this data talking about. What are the key variables that are being talked about? What is this data talking about? This data seems to be talking about employees in a firm. So we are just talking about employees in a firm. Firm as in terms of an organization and not shamba. That this firm has staff, has employed people. That at the beginning of 2021, there were 79 men out of the total staff of 90. So one variable that is coming out clear is in terms of the gender, because we are being told about men and women. So gender is there. Then we are being told 17 staff left, and 13 of these were men. So we have those who are leaving, those who left. Then we are told we recruited. These are the new ones that came on board. So these are the key parameters, the key things that must be reflected in our summary. 1, gender. 2, those who have left. 3, those who are recruited. Because even in the year 2022, we are being told about wastage And wastage in this case must be interpreted as to mean those who have left. That it declined by 3 as compared to the previous year. We are told no woman left. Perhaps something else that is coming up is the time period. We have the year 2021 and 2022. So these are things that must be reflected. That as we reflect this, then we must show those parameters, those variables, those characteristics of interest that are being reflected. So how can we organize this data? How can we tabulate this data? We can tabulate it as follows. And please, you also write. That the information we have, the data we have relates about employees in a farm. We are talking about employees in a farm. Now we have the time period. We are given this in terms of years. We have the year 2021 and we have the year 2022. The years. Then we have the issue of gender. So we have men, we have women, and then we can give the total. Similarly, for 2022, we have men, we have women, and then we can have the total. This is what is given. We are talking about employees in a farm for the years 2021, 2022. As we look at this, we are looking at this in terms of gender. Gender is coming out, men, women, then the total in terms of the employees. So we have those at the start. So we can say that at the start, so we have at January 1st, 2022, 2021. Then we have those that we recruited. We have been given information about recruitment. We have information about those who left. Then we can also get the total at the end. That if we can reflect this information, then it summarizes all that which that we have. We have those at the start. We have information about the recruitment in the year. We have information about those who left, and then we have the total. So we kindly complete that table. Let us complete that table before we do it together. Maybe you take 2 minutes so that we see how you can complete the table. From the information, from the question, complete. We have about 2 minutes to do that so that we can look through it together. So let them work out, then we can get back. So hope you are finishing. Let us complete. Ask to unmute. So we go to the board. Hmm? Okay. Now let us complete and see what you have done. We are told that at the start of 2021, there were a total of 90 staff, for whom 73 were men. So how many men were there? 79, sorry. I think you talked about 79. 79 were men. Meaning the difference, 90 minus 79, that gives you 11 were women. We are told that during the year, I didn't write it down somewhere, but I can see it from here, that in the year 2022, that in the same year, during the year, 17 staff left, and 13 of these were men. So 17 staff have left. So if you come to those who have left, a total of 17 left. Because they left, we can put them in brackets because they're exiting the farm. And out of this, 13 were men. So how many women left? It is 17 minus 13 to give us 4. So in the year, 4 women left. Let's look about the recruitment. That the total recruitment during the year was 13, out of whom 3 were women. So the total recruitment, under recruitment, we have 13, out of whom 3 were women. So how many men were recruited? 10. So by the end of the year, 2021, how many men were there? So it's 79 plus 10 minus 13. So this gives us 89 minus 13, and that leaves us with 76. So we have a total of 76 men. In terms of women, we had 11, 3 were recruited, 4 left. So 11 plus 3, 14. 14 minus 4, that gives you 10. And therefore, at the end of 2021, the total number of staff must be 86. It's either 76 plus 10 to give you 86, or 90 plus 13 minus 17. That should give you 86. For the year 2022, at the start, those at the start are those who completed the year, previous year. So for this, there were 76 men. There were 10 women, and a total of 86. The ones who were there at the end. So during the year 2022, we are told in the question, in the data, that wastage declined by 3 among men. So wastage means those ones leaving. So if 10 men left and is declining by 3, that means 10 minus 3, that will give you 7. No, those who left, 13 had left. So if it reduced by 3, then it means in 2022, 10 men left. It declined by 3 from the previous year. But then we are told that no woman left. So for women, none of them left. And therefore, the total wastage was 10. That's how we complete for those who left wastage. Then we look at the recruitment. We are told that 6 more men, but 1 fewer women were recruited than the previous year. 6 more men. The previous year, we recruited 10 men. So in the following year, we are recruiting 6 more. So 10 plus 6, that gives you 16. Then 1 fewer woman. So we recruited 3. Now we are recruiting 1 less. So that gives us 2. So giving us a total of 18. So we recruited 18. So meaning at the end of the year, we have 76 plus 16 minus 10, and that gives you 82 men. We have 10 plus 12, that gives you 10 plus 2, that gives you 12 women. Then, in terms of the total, that gives you 94. And you can confirm this that 86 plus 18, this is 14, then this is 9, 10, 104, minus 10, that gives you with it 94. So at the end, we have a total of 94 staff. So if you look at this, then you realize that the data that we have is giving us a summary in a table form. But how now do we interpret this? Looking at this, we have presented the data. We have tabulated the data. We have the figures. How do we interpret this? That we had 79 men, we are closing with 82. But they reduced to 76, then increased to 82. 11 women at the start, 3 recruited, 4 left. We had 10 at the end of the first year. We didn't have any leaving, but 2 more are recruited. That gives us 12. Now we can interpret this in a number of ways. Because if you are the human resource officer or you are the CEO of this institution, what advice would you give to the board of management about the employees? From this, a number of things can be observed. That more men are leaving than women. More men are leaving than women. The rate of staff turnover for women is lower than that of men. That this firm is recruiting more men. 10, 16. More men are being recruited in this firm. So what is the implication in terms of the affirmative action? The gender rule, where it is said a third should be of the opposite gender. These are things that you now, as the CEO, as the human resource, as the person in charge, you need to think about. Then look at, in terms of those who left. Because more men are leaving, so women have a tendency of staying more in the farm. What are the effects of this? Now, with this, therefore, the following recommendations can be made to the board. That you recruit more women. One, because there are fewer women. This is not a third. Number 2, women leave. The second reason why you should recruit more women is that more women stay longer in this firm. What are the benefits of as an employee staying longer in a given employment? You have invested in terms of training that person. You have invested in the person because of giving him or her experience. So the more an employee stays in a firm, the more productive that employee becomes. So for you to achieve that, then you recommend that they recommend more women. Perhaps the reason why you normally see some adverts say women are encouraged to apply. It's because of that. They stay longer and 2, the affirmative action. So these are some of the things, some of the interpretations that we are making out of this data. We are able to see at a glance and compare between men and women. This is the essence of what we are saying, tabulation of data. And this is only part and parcel of the organization. So we need to understand, we need to look at it in a more professional way, because these are things that are there and we shall interact with them. Will be CEOs, will be HR officers, will be working with the many organizations, and we need to understand and interpret correctly the trends as they're coming out of this. So let us look at another example, because if you did it very well, then this is the table that we got, and therefore we should get it right. I share the screen. I want to give them an example too. Now look at this example 2. This example 2 now is dealing with about matters of examinations. That the following report was prepared by an examination officer on the performance of students in a certain institution. That out of 3,500 male candidates aged below 20 years of age, 500 passed. Of the 1,100 male candidates 20 years and over, 900 failed. Regarding the female candidates, of the 500 candidates below 20 years of age, 400 failed. And those who failed for the years 20 years and above, of the 400, 340 females, 80 passed. So we need to present this data and tabulate it properly. As seen from the first example, as seen from example 1, we first identify the variables that are being discussed. This is about student performance in an exam, as we are being told. And dealing with age as a factor, is dealing with gender, is dealing with those who passed and those who failed. So in our table, we must reflect those three, in whichever form. We must reflect those three. Those who passed, those who failed, and perhaps the total, those 20 years and below, those 20 years and above. Then we reflect the male and then female. Now, if we look at this, then we can tabulate the table as follows. We are looking at it in terms of student performance. Student performance. So this student performance is in terms of those that are below 20 years. And those are categorized as being male, female. Then we have 20 years and over, male, female. Whether they're male or female, we are looking at them in terms of those who passed. Then we have those who failed. Then we can have the total candidature. Those who passed, below 20 years, male, female, those who failed, and the total. Then we have 20 years and over, 20 years and above, male, female, how many passed, how many failed, the total. Then we can look at the total in terms of how many candidates passed and how many candidates failed in this exam. Oh, I'm told that it's not visible. So we are looking at those that are below 20 years. So we have them in two, male, female. Then we have 20 years and over. Inaonekana? Yeah. I did well to do the slides. That's the deal. Taenda kuangalia kalamu mpya. Complete that table faster so that we can move. Ya 516. Kwa nini? Okay. Bado niko huko. YouTube ni polepole. Transmission. Give me a good example too. Okay. Okay. Wanafunzi wangapi huko? 56 plus 516. Amekuwa 516 at one point. Na wakati unakuja wote kweli? Siku ya kati utaona. Siku ya kati. Watu wengi. Wind up, we proceed. Thank you. We can now proceed. I've seen some of you are giving results on the chat box. That is great. I look at some of your responses. You are giving me the correct information, total passed, replying to somebody now, total passed 1,180, failed 4,260, then final total 5,440. I think that is better. The past are 800, failed 4556, 4560, total 5440. Now, with that in mind, therefore, you can look at this as the response. Let's stop sharing. It's not moving. Yes. Now, if you look at that student performance, then you should have gotten the following: that below 20 years, 500 men passed, and the women 100. For those that are 20 years and above, 200 passed for men and 80 for women. That gives us a total of 880. Then those who failed, below 20 years, 3,000 failed. And the women, 400 failed. 20 years and above, 900 men failed, 260 women failed. The total from the whole group that failed was 4,560. I think people have gotten this correctly, and we appreciate them for having followed the right way. So this is how we can generally tabulate data. And from this, you are able to see between men and women who are doing better, that in total, 700 men passed and only 180 women failed. So still the exam must have favored men. But in terms of the failure rate, the men who failed were 3,900 vis-a-vis 660 women. So if you look at this, then you realize that the performance is wanting, because 4,560 failed as opposed to only 880 candidates who passed in this exam. So this is how we can, and therefore we can make recommendations that perhaps the exam needs to be checked, the methods of instruction needs to be looked at, and maybe the teaching approach has to be changed because the failure rate seems to be too high. So next, now we look at frequency distributions. How do we now make distributions out of this? Because we are looking at tabulation of data. That one we have been tabulating. Now let us see how do we create what we call frequency distribution tables. When you talk about a frequency table, these are tables which shows how the total frequency is distributed over the various values of a variable. We want to see to it that of the 500, how many are in each of those groupings that we call classes. So we generate this by grouping values of a variable into what we call class intervals. And frequency counts consists of the number of times a given observation occurs. So if they fall within a given value, remember this is quantitative data, and this is discrete, then we are able to put it into certain intervals. So even if it's also continuous, within a given range, we can count how many observations fall there to get their frequencies. And this therefore becomes the frequency table. Recall from our first earlier example about the households, the number of family members in the household. We did generate a frequency table, and that table was easy for us because we are only dealing with about 5 or 6 households. But in the case of large numbers, then the preparation of such frequency distributions, the discrete frequency distributions, becomes cumbersome. But if we must come up with a distribution, then we must construct what we call now a grouped or a continuous frequency distribution. How does this grouped or continuous frequency distribution work? That we need therefore to group data, put data into categories or otherwise class intervals. And now we count the observations that fall in each of those intervals. The number of those falling in each of those intervals will now give us the class frequency. And the observations therefore will be put into ranges or intervals for that matter. The basic question that will arise is, how do we generate those ranges? Is it a haphazard thing, or it has some steps and procedure? Ladies and gentlemen, we don't work arbitrarily to generate these continuous or grouped frequency distributions. That there are 4 steps that can be followed. These are as follows. 1, we determine the range, which we denote by R, the difference between the largest and the smallest observation. Number 2, we select the number of classes, the intervals that we need to have, K. And usually, K ranges between 5 and 20. We should be modest enough, depending on how large the data is. But averagely, about 8 is sufficient. Then we determine the number of class size, the class size. This should not be the date. Determine the class size. The class size is normally a quotient of the range divided by the number of classes. Then we determine the lower class boundary or limit. We shall define what those ones are, such that this lower class boundary or limit must include the least observation. Already we shall have identified the least and the largest in step 1. And therefore, the subsequent boundaries or limits are generated by adding the class size. Then finally, we tally the observations, those that fall in each of those intervals. Then we obtain the class, the frequency distribution table for the continuous variable, or otherwise the grouped frequency distribution. In a nutshell, determine the range R, decide on the number of classes, evaluate the class size, then determine the lower class boundary or limit, and generate the other class limits or boundaries for the other intervals, until when you get to that interval that has the highest observation. Then finally, you tally the observations, find those frequencies in each of those intervals to obtain the frequency table. We can see this in the following example. Example 1. Example 1. Suppose we take an example dealing with marks, where the following marks were obtained by students in an exam, and they are given. Maybe you write down those marks. Write them down. I can go per column for us to write with speed. 40, 74, 54, 47, 46, 39, 55, 56, 51, 56, 55, 61, 41, 50, 49, 41, 33, 58, 38, 40, 65, 40, 44, 42, 48, 37, 59, 58, 43, 68, 73, 66, 36, 37, 44, 38, 71, 25, 50, and finally 39. So this gives us around marks for about 40 students. If we are to prepare a discrete frequency table, then it will be cumbersome as we saw. So for this purpose, we can group and create class intervals. We have given the procedure on how to go about this. We determine the range, select the number of classes, determine the class size, then determine the lower class boundary, and then tally the observations. Let us follow through that procedure and see how we can generate the grouped frequency distribution table. I stop. Now, from that set of 40 marks, we need to determine, identify the largest score. My pens are failing me. So we have the largest score, we have the least score. From this, the largest, if you observed through, you will get 74. The least is 25. And therefore the difference, which gives us the range R, is 9,4. That is step one. The range is 49. We need now to determine the number of classes. Number of classes, K. Suppose we jointly agreed that we have 5 intervals. 5. Then we need to determine the class size. In step 3 of our procedure, this is given by R over K, and this is 49 all over 5, and that gives you 9, that's 45. Remainder is 4.8, which we can approximate to say 10, so that we work with a whole number. This gives us 9.8. Let us approximate to 10. Now, this step 1, the range is 49. The number of classes we have selected 5 because it ranges between 5 and 20. The class size, C. Some books refer to it with the I. This gives us 49 over 5 to give us 9.8, which we have approximated to 10. Now, we need to generate the table. We must identify the lower class limit or the lower class boundary, such that it includes the least observation. In our case, ladies and gentlemen, the least observation is 25. And the largest or the highest observation is 74. So if we need to include the least observation, then we need to look at what are we talking about? We are talking about marks. This is our variable. We are talking about marks. Then we want to generate and see how many students have scored within that range. The frequency. This one can be given as number of students, which you can give as F, the frequency. So it's upon us now to decide what do we start with so that we include the value 25. For uniformity, suppose we began with the 25, because it will be included 2. And that range must have a class size of 10. So we can count from 25, 10 units. So we have 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. So this will extend from 25 to 34, not 35. Many times you will make an error. We have said you don't add, but count the units to 34. So we said in step 4 that the subsequent intervals can be determined by adding the class size. So we now add 25 plus 10 to give you 35, to 34 plus 10 to give you 44. Then the next one, we continue adding the class size. 45 to 54, 55 to 64, 65 to 74. Now our highest is 74. So we have taken care, the least and the highest observation. Then what we are now left is to tally the observations. Tallying means we count. How many students are between 25 and 34? Then we record the number. How many are between 35 and 44? We record the number. We can do that for the entire of the table. We say that the number of classes K is 5. If you count, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because we already predetermined that. Let us take 2 minutes to count, and take your time to count so that you get the correct figure. I'm sure we are going to get different values for the number of students. Be as keen as possible so that you complete this table. Let us take 2 minutes to complete that table. Technical marks, which I'm sharing on the screen. The marks are there on the screen. You know, Japan. See it, we can, I'll go back to the old system, but at the bank, LMS. Then in the work, like now this week 1, I put that the dates on the material so that they can be accessing as we go by. Wind up. Wind up. Now, if you have typed correctly, then you'll come up with the following results. That 25 to 34, there are 2. That 35 to 44, there are 16. 45 to 54, 8. 55 to 64, 8. And then 65 to 74, this should be at 1632. This should be 6. The total here should give you 40. The total should give you 40. So you have generated this table. This table that gives us the ranges and the counts. This is what we refer to it as a continuous or otherwise a grouped frequency table. It is grouped because it has the intervals and the counts. Now we talked about something being continuous is something that takes values over a range. That if you check the first interval, 25 to 34, this will include values from 24.5 to 34.5. If you check the second interval, this should start from 34.5 to 44.5. Similarly, the next is 44.5 to 54.5. Then 54.5 to 64.5. And therefore, the last one, 64.5 to 74.5. Now, what we have included are the true limits. The values 24.5, 34.5, 44.5. These are the ones that we refer to as boundaries. These are boundaries. So this on the left will be the lower class boundary or the lower true limit, and this to the right is the upper class limit or the upper true limit. The values 25, 34, those to the left, these are giving us the class limits, and therefore on the left is the lower class limit. These are boundaries. And the one to the right, this gives us the upper class limits. So there exists a difference between a limit and a boundary. That's why we are talking of class limits and class boundaries. That this can be understood from the general understanding of a boundary and the limit. That even at home, We have boundaries between our plots, between our farms, and we have limits. That the boundary, this is where you share with your neighbor. The limit is the farthest you will go while you are plowing. That this can be seen better if we use the number line. That on the number line, we have the values 25, 34, 44, then we have 54, and so on. That this interval, 25 to 34, will include all those values that will range from 24.5 to 34.5, which shall include, because all those values that extend within that range will be included. And the next interval, 34 to 44, this shall extend from 34.5 to 44.5. Why? Because the interval 34 to 44 will share at, and that of 25 to 34 will share at 34.5. The interval 34 to 44 will extend up to and including 44.5. And similarly, that interval 44 to 54, this will extend up to 54.5. These values are giving us the limits, and these ones are giving us the boundaries. So let us get that difference between the limits and the boundaries. In some books, they talk of the boundaries as the true limits. So let us not confuse when we come up, we read about true limits and the boundaries. Example 2. So that is the solution. For example 2, we are talking about the age at death of people in a certain village was recorded as follows. I read through 38, 68, 39, 55, 60, 61, 56, 49, 51, 55, 58, 48, 58, 47, 65, 50, 50, 52, 39, 53, 43, 42, 51, 62, 47, 55, 58, 54, 52, 46, 65, 45, 55, 46, 42, 52, 34, 59, 53, 48, 48, 60, and then 52. That's the age at death of people who are dying in this village. Then we are required to generate a group frequency distribution of class size 5. Class size 5. Now let us scan through. Let us scan through and see if we can generate the table. Now looking through the table, we can agree so that we see to it that we are all reading from the same script. We want to read from the same script, from that data. Let me reshare. So you look through which is the highest and which is the least. I see we have 38, 39, 35, 39, 50. We have 34. 34 is the least. And the highest is what? I've seen 65. The highest is 65. So already the class size has been worked out for us. There's a 68, yes. The highest is 68 here. So already the class size has been worked out for us. So step 1, 2, 3 is worked out. So we start from step 4. We determine the lower class limit or boundary. Let us agree to start with 30 to 34. We start with 30 to 34. Then we add the class size. Then we shall have 35 to 39. Then 40 to 44. Like that. And then complete the table. Let's have 2 minutes to complete that table. Be more accurate. Don't miss out. That is 34, 1. Wale wa haraka. Haka kamefanya yote. 65 to 69, 3. Lakini najua wenye wanaenda haraka hawa Are we through? I've seen some are posting their results on the chat box. That's really good. So if you have worked out correctly and done the correct tallying, then you will get those results. 30 to 34, 1. 35 to 39, 4. 40 to 44, 3. 45 to 49, 9. 50 to 54, 10. 55 to 59, 8. 60 to 64, 4. And then 65 to 69, 3. So this gives you the frequency distribution table, which you can look at it at a glance and see where most students seem to have scored. And in this case, we have 10 students who scored 50 to 54 with a good number to the right, with a similar number to the left. We shall interpret that with the time, and we shall look at that under analysis. So I wish that we conclude our lesson today and perhaps ask for questions. Today I've not seen the questions in the chat box, but I'll request that they allow so that you raise your hand and you can give comment about the class so that we can also improve on it. So the floor is open. Let you be unmuted so that we can see. Yes, Graham.
Excuse me, sir. I have a question.
Kwani ameanute?
The range with the 34. Can you manage to the class? Are you getting me, sir? I'm saying.
With it all. Kipngeno?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, who is speaking?
Victor.
Yes, Victor.
I was asking about the notes.
Notes?
Yes.
Good, I'll give a comment about that.
Okay, thank you.
Emmanuel Wanambuko? Emmanuel? Graham, can you be audible now? Graham? You got lost? Professor Pius? Na ukisumbua nikisikia unaongea, we will mute you forever in this class. What Amri?
Hello?
Only talk when you've been allowed to talk. Professor Pius? We pass. Azidak? Azidak? We pass. Mary Anyango? Mary Anyango?
Mwisho mbona tumeanza kwa age ya 30 to 34 na mbona tujatumia 34 to
umeanza na 30 to 34?
Hey.
Alafu?
Instead of 34, sijaelewa.
If you check the procedure.
Yes.
Ukienda hapo juu. Kwa procedure.
Yes.
Just see the screen. Number 4, this one.
Yes.
Determine the
Yes.
boundary or limit such that it includes the least observation. So it's you to determine where to start from. As long as the first interval contains that least observation, which you will have identified in 1, determining the range. So I chose so that for uniformity we start with 30. Remember in example 1, we chose to start with the 25, which was the least observation. Now we are making this to include 34, which is the least observation. The criteria is that that first interval must include the least observation. That is the trick. So you can start with 32, you can start with 33, but I selected. That is what is given in number 4.
Okay,
Kawasawa?
thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Then Edie. Edie? Pass. Erickson? This gentleman who has the name of Manchester United player who did not score yesterday. We pass. Emmanuel Wafula? Emmanuel Wafula? We pass. Kalivo Abdallah?
Yes, sir.
Yes, speak up.
I appreciate the way you have taught the lesson, and we are well understood. We think let it continue as the next lesson.
Thank you for the compliment. We'll do our best to ensure that we give you the best to make you understand. Thank you. Josephat? Josephat?
Okay, Mister, I appreciate for the lesson, but at least next time we'll put some out.
Next time we do what? You speak up, you are not clear in what you want.
Nasema.
You know, you speak up, I cannot hear you, bwana. Umenyonga hiyo kitu yako sauti.
Okay, nasema mkuu. Next time.
Are you getting him? We are not getting you, bwana. Just what?
Okay, thanks for the lesson. Yeah, very good.
Thank you so much. But your comment, if you can get to my inbox, I'll appreciate. Kevin Juma. Kwa nimekuruka.
Mimi hii lesson tu peke yake ndio.
Pardon? Please, when we give you an opportunity, you speak up. Musa Ambani.
Sasa nikiongea tasikia.
Ruth Wakoli. Ruth Wakoli. Manuel Manambuko. Manuel Manambuko. We pass. Mukuro. Victor.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yes. And just
want to
second
the 2 members who have been on stage to appreciate you and the spirit burning so that we continue enjoying this lesson more and more. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the compliments. Remember, tomorrow I'll be available for consultations, the way we said, individualized consultations, and any other day you may want, you can get me in ABB 214, ABB 214, and I also sit at the directorate of PSSP at Gate B. We call it the diaspora. So if you want to find out which office I am exactly for you to come for consultations, tomorrow and another day, you can get me on 0726 460 769. Feel free to come and consult. Vincent Otala, the floor is yours. Vincent Otala. Okay, then we can look at the chat. The class has been awesome from Britain. Good, thank you. The message is on. David Smith, we appreciate.
Sema nasema tumwambie kitu leo tunasikia. So mimi pia nikaraise
Pardon, phone number. My phone number is 0726. Number is 0726 460 769. And Ruth, when I give you a chance to talk and you don't talk, then you want to take me back, I reprimand you. Ukipewa nafasi umeinua mkono, ongea. Kama huwezi ongea, usiinue mkono. I like the way you project your words. Mimi ni mzito. In the first example, you stated that 25. And why in the second example you did not start from 34? Yes, you can start with any number. I've answered that. Start with any number as long as the first observation is included. I've said you can start with any. The difference between descriptive and differential statistics, kwa mpole bwana. Tutafika huko. Kwa mpole. Thanks a lot for the lesson. Mnaenda mbio. The class has been awesome. Thank you. Jina yako? My name is Duncan Wasike Wekesa, alias Muzito. Notes kindly I've reported. Now, on this issue of notes, I want to request that on Monday, you log into the LMS. Log into LMS. Then as you register under my name, Duncan Wasike, KUC125, you will access all the notes, worked examples, and even exercises for you to do at your own level. We shall provide them in the LMS. I like the way you, unataka kunibaia chai, mister. Wewe leta chai tutakunywa bwana. Thanks a lot, thank you. Continue with that spirit. We are here for you. Pius ameonekana hapo na tulimpea nafasi ya kuongea, sasa we don't comment. Thanks sir for wonderful presentation. We appreciate. Thanks a lot for the lesson. It's interesting and engaging. Hii ni timu kubwa. Utanitembelea? Karibu. Kwa ofisi lakini sikuwe out of the office. Chai nitakuletea. Seth, bring that tea. I'm ready to sip it now. The lesson has been interesting. I appreciate. Napenda huyu lecturer, naweza ishi na yeye. Stop being abusive now. Can someone ask you a question through the phone call? I have no problem. Thanks a lot, sir. May God's grace keep you. Amen. Thank you, dog. Have a good work. Thank you. We endeavor to do that. I think now we are doing what we have had a general look of the lesson. But keep coming your comments. I think this is being recorded for purposes of others. Thank you so much. May I now have the opportunity to call off the lesson and wish you well in the day. Take good care of yourselves. Remember, you are here for a purpose and you are here for a season and for a reason. Keep it to yourself. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.